I'm very well, Salvatore. Thank you. And congratulations on the 45th episode. And thank you to all the viewers out there who have been with us from the beginning. Well, I bring both a optimistic picture and sort of connection, possibly with a little bit of curse, but more optimistic and more connection. So what we did was we polled Australians on their attitudes towards social media, and what we found were quite some interesting results that sort of go against a bit of the negativity that social media has been getting over the recent years. So the majority of people, the majority of Australians, regardless of age, 70% use social media to connect with friends and family. This was quite fascinating because it was consistent across age brackets. So, across Gen X, millennials, baby boomers, the majority of them use social media to connect with friends and family. The only exception being Gen Z, that use it for entertainment, and connecting with friends and family was a close second. So I thought that was fascinating, because that was almost putting the social back in social media. It was using it as its original purpose. And that sort of followed up as well on, we asked people, do you think social media connects people, or does it isolate people from the real world? And again, 57%, a majority, thought it connected people more so than isolated them from the real world. And I think that's also important, because it goes against the narrative that social media sort of, it keeps people in a bubble. It puts them in their home. It's just them and their computer screen, and they're isolated and not interacting with the real world. But what our poll results show, it's a slightly more complicated picture than that, and people are getting a real value and benefit from being able to use social media to interact with their network. I thought you might. It's pretty much from millennials upwards that are using it for connecting with friends and family. And even when we went to Gen Z, and perhaps when we go to audience questions, the question will be, who's right, me pronouncing it Gen Z or you Gen Z? I can see that being an issue, but I'll say Gen Z. But no, and even when you look at Gen Z, the majority are using it for entertainment. And we also asked, do you use it for news as well? And that those numbers were a lot lower. So even if you say, I mean, you are right to say that older generations are using it for connecting with friends and family. That is pretty consistent with younger generations as well. And even when they're not using it for connecting with friends and family, it's a source of entertainment more so than political action, although that does come into it as well. So we did just we the questions asked about social media, and you can break it up by the specific platforms that people use. But I think quite interestingly, and I think this certainly goes against sort of the mainstream narrative, is that younger Twitter users were more positive about the impact that social media has on society, with Facebook users being the ones that had the most negative view of it. So that certainly goes against, Twitter is just this awful place where all these awful things happen. Their users are actually quite positive about how it's influencing society. I mean, I think that's a good point, Salvatore, which is why it was so important in the first place for us to do this polling to ask ordinary Australians what they think, because a lot of the attention has been, from within social media or from within traditional media commenting on this. And I mean, you're right to point out that people in the public sphere, journalists, politicians, entertainers of all stripes, would attract more negativity just because of their profile. But also, I mean, it's just a very basic fact that humans are hardwired to notice negative things more than positive things. So, if you have 100 positive comments and one negative, then the one negative is going to stick out in your mind. So we do have that negativity bias as well. And I mean, obviously there are, incidences of, very poor behavior and a lot of nasty things happening on social media. But I think the coverage of that is obscuring a lot of the benefits that people get from social media as well, and a lot of the positive things that come out of it. I mean, you just said we're in the policy space. There's a lot of sharing of ideas and collaborations with people that, in the past would be very difficult to have. I mean, the social media has dramatically lowered the cost of entry for mass communication. So, you can connect with people from all over the world within your areas of interest, within your areas of expertise, and you can exchange ideas. I mean, I've got a friend who's doing a PhD in microbiology, and there's a microbiology Twitter community where they share their ideas and research. So there's all these sort of, quite niche little communities on there, and they don't have huge followings individually, but they get a lot of benefit from being able to share their work. It might seem a little bit odd, but even though I very much enjoy writing about social media, I think it's a absolutely fascinating topic. Even within the classical liberal family, there's a lot of different views about it and how we should deal with it. I have been on Twitter and various social media platforms, just very basically and personally. I don't find them that helpful. Whenever I've been on them, I don't use them a huge amount. It's just sort of a bit of a distraction just for me personally. That's how I find it. I've been sort of playing around with some of the newer platforms like Minds and Locals and that sort of thing. But yeah, I just haven't found the personal benefit from the more traditional social media sites. Well, Clubhouse isn't one that I'm particular familiar with. I mean, I think probably like a lot of people, it came to my attention with the whole GameStop Elon Musk, and then that whole spat between the CEO of Robinhood and Elon Musk on Clubhouse. But I think the important thing to realize about things like Clubhouse and Minds and Locals is that what it shows is that there are possible alternatives to the big social media sites. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the power of these big sites, and are they too big, and that sort of thing. And I have some sympathies towards those debates. But what we often forget is that these are relatively new technologies. They've been around for about a decade, which is nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. And we need to allow time for these alternative platforms to grow. And they are getting a lot of popularity, particularly if they sort of take the negatives of the big platforms and turn it around. So you've got, ones that are privacy focused, ones that say, they have digital charters, they have charters of digital rights and those sort of things, and they're getting a lot of play as well. I absolutely think blogs have a future. I mean, there was some interesting research that came out last year. I think it was particularly because of coronavirus, but email newsletters have last year skyrocketed in popularity. And as you would know, Salvatore, yourself from your own work, that when people have online, when they have blogs, they often have a newsletter as well attached to that, so they can send out their latest work to their subscriber base. So there's that as well. I mean, there's a Substack that's come up, so our viewers may or may not be aware of that. So that's a site where freelance writers can put their work on it. You can have it paid or unpaid, and then you can have an email based that as well. And Substack sort of takes care of that behind the scenes tech work for you as well. So no, I think there's if anything, they'll become more important to me. We were just talking before, Salvatore, about physical, how many people read a physical newspaper, and I think that's going to be declining, probably not as rapidly as what many suggest, but eventually they will be gone, and this will become a lot more important. That's I think they're willing to pay for some social content. I mean, the Australian reported that, their digital subscribers have been increasing significantly. But what we're seeing as well is that there are these new business models coming up. So you have outlets like Quillette, like Spiked Online, where all the content is free, but they rely on a dedicated base of donors. So, whether you can donate as much as you like or as little as you like, they've got supplementary forms of income in terms of podcasts or merchandise or books. You have Patreon accounts, you've got all these sorts of things. So I think there's kind of two tracks happening of you've got the traditional media that's moved online and they have a subscriber base, which shows that people are still definitely willing to pay for it. And then you've got this sort of new models where it's free for everyone, but they are being paid by donors as well. I think with it's quite interesting. As you would know, Salvatore, we actually had an event on cancel culture last night, and we had Claire Lehman, who is the founding editor of Quillette, and we talked about this very issue and various others. So that video is going to be up on our YouTube channel in the near future. But I mean, my issue with open. Also, Peter Curdy, yes, our CIS colleague. Yeah, absolutely. So he was there too. So my issue with open letters is, I mean, you can write all the open letters you want, but the leaders don't have to capitulate. So if you're the head of a department or a head of a university or anything like that, and a letter pops up on your desk and says, "We demand you fire this person because they hurt our feelings," what you should do is say, "No, I'm going to stand by this. We believe in academic freedom. We believe in open inquiry. And if you don't, then this probably isn't the workplace for you." I think what social media is doing is that it's enhancing social skills. So we often think of social media in terms of, you're teaching people tech, you're teaching them to be digital natives, all that sort of thing. But particularly from what our research found, in that most people are using it to connect with others and they get a great benefit from that. It is keeping people in touch with their social network, with their friends and family, and also expanding that as well. So it's not, I sit online, I've only got this online, it's very one dimensional. You're using it to expand your network, to enhance your social skills. I mean, I was talking to a lady last night, and she was talking about how, she likes using Instagram because she can see people, her friends from all over the world, posting things. And even though it's, just a picture here or there, she feels more a part of their world than if she didn't have that tool of Instagram. Well, I think it's not necessarily wrong. I think it's simplistic. So what I address in the paper as well is what has sort of been disparagingly termed filter bubbles. And this is the idea that social media just sticks everyone in their ideological political corners, and you just get more and more radical in there. But the first thing to note is that this happens offline. People tend to socialize with people who are similar to them, who agree with them, who have the same belief. So if you think it's a problem online, you think it's a problem offline, but typically no one is making that argument. But also I think it's superficially it's appealing to say that that social media, technology just sticks people in their basement and they never come out. But what it actually does, it opens up the world. I mean, I was actually reading something yesterday. It was talking about how introverts have been able to meet more people online. So even if you typically don't like socializing, if you meet like-minded people, particularly in your area, you can sort of talk to them online first. Maybe that makes them a little bit more comfortable, and then they actually end up meeting in real life as well. So it's expanding that network. If I'm going to assume that Anthony, and hello, by the way, Anthony, I saw you last night at the Cancel Culture event. It was great to see you. I think information harvesting. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of concerns, and there has been for some time about how our personal information, our data is used online. And I think, but particularly with a lot of these newer platforms that are coming up, they do have a privacy focus, and I think a lot of people are a lot more aware of this. I mean, even now on the traditional sites like Twitter and Facebook, you have a lot more ability to go in and change settings in relation to what information is collected about you, when and how. There's certain things about you can request data, you can delete data, you can do all those sorts of things, and I think that is going to become a lot more of a popular method as things go forward and people are aware of it. But I mean, there was also, I think it was, I mean, I'm very big on privacy, and I think our audience would be as well. I think I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago, there was some study done in America where they actually asked people like how much money would it take them to to basically like be paid for them to stop using these platforms if they were concerned about privacy. And it was something like over $1,000 before people would even consider it. So even though these newer platforms are going to be privacy focused and I think will be popular, I think there's also a lot of people out there as well that just aren't particularly concerned with it. They're willing to make that trade-off to use I use quote unquote free, because the expression being if it's free, then you're the product. But but I think a lot of people are happy to make that trade-off. It's probably both, to be honest. I mean, when you have particularly companies like Apple, they very much it's entirely set up so you stay within the Apple network. So you get the phone and it's got, the headphones, and then it links to your laptop and it links to all these sorts of things. So they're obviously invested in doing that. But I think particularly these newer sort of tech companies that are coming up. So you've got innovations like, DuckDuckGo, you've got Bill Ottman at Minds, and these sort of kind of newer tech bros that are coming up. They're very much interested in privacy for the sake of the consumer. I think this was by far my favorite result of the paper, because not only did we find that, 2/3, the majority of Australians, want these platforms to be politically neutral. This was consistent across political lines. So whether you supported Labor, Liberal, Conservatives, or other actually having the most support of it. So I think what that was a very positive finding for me, because what it showed is that Australians aren't particularly politically divided on that issue. It's not, I want to speak and we're gonna shut down my opponent. It's pretty much, they want these platforms to be a place where they can exchange ideas. I mean, social media has become very important in politics in the terms of, political organization, getting causes out there. As I mentioned before, the costs of entry into these platforms are very low. So you can reach people in a way like never before. And Australians are quite happy to engage with that. And they don't want these tech companies to come in and tell them, what you can say politically, and, shut down only one side of the debate or the other. So I think it was a very positive finding. Well, it's now, I think it's passed both houses now. Look, to be perfectly honest, I'm quite concerned with the media bargaining code. I think it's a bad thing for economic freedom, mainly because it tackles the wrong issue. I mean, papers have seen falling revenue because of outlets like Seek and Classifieds, where, you know, job opportunities and searching for those sorts of things have gone online. And it also, with the media bargaining code, it puts an awful lot of power in the hands of one minister. So at the moment, it's a Liberal Party minister, but there's nothing to say that, when there's a change of government and you have someone who comes in and, for example, they're hostile towards News Corp, they can just say, right, you're out of the media bargaining code. So I think, it's going to be quite a while before we see the negative impacts, but, something similar happened in Spain in 2014. They introduced a similar sort of law, and it basically wiped out independent media in Spain. So I think it could possibly be a little bit too short-sighted. I can understand it. I can understand where they're coming from, but I think possibly, like a lot of regulations, there'll be unintended consequences. I think, unfortunately, what social media and cancel culture, there's a there's an interlocking there, in that social media is very good for whipping up outrage, and for sort of, so, when someone posts about something, there's a comment or whatever, and then, it's so easy for everyone to get to get involved. As I keep mentioning, the low cost of entry can be a can be a positive, but also a negative, in that, it takes nothing for someone to tweet, oh, this person should be fired, and then, various other people to like that as well. So you sort of have that social media mobbing effect. And then I think that if you're an employer of someone who's being called to be cancelled, if you're you know a CEO of a brand or something that's calling for a name change, it can seem quite scary when all of a sudden your page, lights up with these notifications demanding XYZ behavior. Thank you, Salvatore. It was a pleasure.